based on a recent survey and numbers which have been generated based on recent studies. So the points that I'm going to list here in this slide are specific to Indian economy, specific to Indian. But actually, if you take the numbers aside, the qualitative contribution of each of them will probably apply the same way to any economy in the world, any modern economy in the world. Yeah, the importance of airport as and its infrastructure is because that stems from the role that it plays in the overall transportational network of the country, or of any country for that matter. We are now talking specific to India, and obviously it contributes directly to the international competitiveness. That is, how fast you can procure things, how fast you can move people around, fast you can get people here, or how fast you can transport people out, people as well as materials. Okay, so those all in an industrial world, these all are important contributions or important elements which determine the competitiveness of a nation from industrial perspective. And to the development of infrastructure and the merger and the are essential for flow of investment. That is, if you need to have money being invested in the country by foreign currency for development purposes, etc., you need to have proper connectivity with the outer world, and airports do play a pivotal role in establishing that connectivity. The cargo movement in India is estimated as 35% of the total value of exports. So, of the total, materials that are being moved in and out of the country, the air transport itself contributes to about 35% of it, and even more significantly, about 97% of the country's foreign tourists arrive by air. And that's quite obvious because unlike European countries, the land connectivity to neighbors is not good in India. So the 97% of our tourist travel is into and out of the country is by air travel. So and obviously tourism is one of the important foreign exchange earner for the country, which all show that the air transport segment in general and the infrastructure that are closely associated to the airports in particular do contribute significantly to the economy of the country. Okay, so the cargo movement as well as the tourism, which is one of the major foreign currency earners for the country, they are all primarily dependent on the air infrastructure, airport infrastructure, as well as the air transport infrastructure. So, so in a nutshell, this is what the role of airports in the role of airports in role that airports play in the nation's economy. In fact, we will be going more into details of each of these, specific to the economic role of airports, etc. But the purpose here is just to state the topic as we'll be discussing various aspects of it in the coming sessions. Okay, now we go to the what I mentioned earlier as some of defining some of the terms and just for just making them clear for the discussions that we are going to have. First is airport and aerodrome. Two words sometimes interchangeably used, but aerodrome is not very not in so much in practice nowadays. Um, the relation to them is based on the obviously because both of them are used for landing and takeoff of airports. Aerodrome is more UK terminology, and I guess it is still used, though it's not the worldwide usage of aerodrome is not much actually. But American English is exclusively airport. The difference by way of the usage is that airport is a place where the aircraft take off or land, which means that it should have at least one runway. Actually, in most cases, several runways, and should have a helipad for helicopter landing and buildings which are hangars and terminal buildings. We'll be discussing more in detail about hangars and terminal buildings. But when you say an airport, it should have all of these. Should have runways, helipads, and hangars and the main terminal buildings. And they should also have facility to for the maintenance or for the maintenance of aircraft, and they should have facilities which can for supporting all these functions in airport. As opposed to that, aerodrome is used, the term used to places in which aircraft flight operations are functioned, regardless of whether there are passengers, cargo, or neither. Actually, it's just the ICAO definition is just that defined area, including any buildings, installation, etc., intended to be used either wholly or in part for the arrival, departure, and surface movement of aircraft. So you should have facilities. You should have a runway because you need to have arrival and departure, and the limited space or limited infrastructure that can support the arrival, departure, and surface movement of aircraft. That is what is mentioned. That is what is referred to as aerodrome. A major difference between the two is that even if it's just for cargo, it can be. Even if the transport is limited to that of cargo, it can be referred to as an aerodrome. But an airport is necessarily, it should have facilities for passengers, passenger travel, and it should have much more facilities than what is meant by the facilities constrained in an aerodrome. The ICAO definition is what we have, what I just quoted here. ICAO will be discussing in detail. The International Civil Aviation Organization will be discussing more about them, their role and some of the regulations and how they are important or how we make use of some of the terminology defined by ICAO, etc. Anyway, the ICAO definition is what we have used here to describe what an aerodrome is. So aerodrome is a limited facility, whereas airports they have a larger scope and larger roles, and they should meet the standards of ICAO. And so from this definition, obviously airports can be referred to as aerodromes, but not vice versa. That is, an airport will have certainly the facility for landing, takeoff, etc. But then aerodrome will not have all the facility that an airport requires to have. So that's a difference in the implications, difference in the typical usage of the two terms airport and aerodrome. And obviously, what we are going to discuss is exclusively about airports. So we are going to discuss airports with all the facilities that are associated with it. And specific to airports, again, these two terms will be going into more details as we go by. The operational area and the terminal. The terminal is probably what is the most accessible by passengers, and that what we as passengers always make use of, the maximum use of. So it's the building, the construction where the passengers transfer between ground transportation and facilities that allow them to board and disembark. Now, the transfer between ground transportation and boarding, that is important. That is because you need to have some facility to get into an airport. So if you are in one part of the city, you are going to take a public transport, a taxi, or you are going to drive to the airport. So that is the ground transportation. It could be public transport, your own vehicle, or maybe a taxi or some hired vehicle. That's grounds transport. So the terminal basically facilitates you using or rather, yeah, coming to the airport by ground transport facility and then getting transferred to the aircraft, in which and during the process it should have facilities to avail to purchase the tickets, transfer the luggages, checking the luggages, and go through the security screening, etc. So all these processes, that is right from moving out from your ground transport uh, vehicle to and going through the entire process of check-in, ticket. Going through the entire process of check-in, ticketing, luggage, security, etc. That the whole facility is referred to as the terminal. Whereas operational areas include the entire runways and the hangars, wherever I mean many of them to which the passengers per se do not have direct access. So operational areas and terminals. These are the two. I mean, actually, one is a subset of the other. The terminal can be considered as a subset of the operational areas, but we will be looking into the components of each of them, the types of components of the types, the various designs, and what is important, etc. as we move by. So the other two terms, operational areas, terminal, will be using them later. But then I just wanted to list the terms as I mentioned earlier, just clarify the terminology here. Sorry, any questions so far before we move on to the term aviation? Okay. Uh, Aviation. Again, I know you are all familiar with this term aviation, but I'm just going to formally put some components that are specific to the definition of aviation industry, so that when we take this term or when we use this term or when we make use of this to explain the role of airports, etc., we should have a comprehensive picture of what is meant by aviation industry. So you can just take it as more like refreshing yourself about what should be the components of aviation industry. It actually aviation is some many times is just used in connection with air transports, but air transportation systems. But in reality, in the more strictest in usage of the term, it encompasses all the fields of business that are related to the aircraft industry per se. So aircraft manufacturers, air safety specialists. Please look at each of them. Aircraft manufacturers, that is the companies which make aircraft. So Airbus, Boeing, they are all part of the aviation industry. air safety specialists, the service providers which are focused on air safety. Then services tied to military and military air transport. So when you just say aviation, anything that is related to military aviation, military air transport is also aviation industry, is a part of aviation industry. Now, companies that design, produce, and make use of drones, etc., they are also considered to be part of aviation industry. So, the term aviation is not just restricted to air travel. It is or it includes all the segments that we have listed here, manufacturers. So when I say an aircraft manufacturers, you should also remember that though it is not listed here, aircraft engine manufacturers, so like GE, Pratt and Whitney, etc. So they are provide engines to the aircraft manufacturers. So the aircraft engine manufacturers, aircraft component manufacturers, all that fall as part of the aviation industry. So all these constitute the larger arena of aviation industry. No, so if you are actually talking about transportation, air transportation, then the more appropriate term obviously will be airline industry. So aviation industry is a larger is the larger picture, whereas airline industry is part of it. When you say airline industry, it's just a business that is offering air transportation services for people and cargo, people or cargo. Say SpiceJet, for example, Air India, they all are part of airline industry, right? So they constitute, or they are elements of aviation industry. But if you are specifically talking about them, they are airline industry. So it's offering air transportation services. Obviously they are part of the wider aviation industry, but quite often you may see the terms being used interchangeably, that is airline industry and aviation industry. So I just want to warn you, or to caution you, that when you actually talk about aviation industry, strictly speaking, it encompasses a larger number of activities, all businesses that are related to aircraft industry, like aircraft manufacturing, engine manufacturing, service providers, air security systems, military, etc. Everything inclusive. Whereas airline industry is the one which is referring to the transportation segment alone. So the players like SpiceJet, British Airways, etc. So they are all part of airline industry. Now, in the first slide, I just mentioned about what aviation industry means for India. In a more globalized sense, I guess the importance is quite obvious. I just have listed here, but I don't think I have to give a long lecture on that. On it has been key in facilitating efficient travel to distant places. So connecting people, connecting businesses, connecting economies, connecting cultures, right? All this is being made possible through aviation industry. Or more specifically, when you just talk about movement, is basically because of the air transport industry, which is a part of the aviation industry. So the importance is quite obvious. If you need to have interaction with the rest of the world, you need in the modern world, you need to rely heavily on air transport. And because of that, it has been a key contributor to the global economic prosperity, the growth, is largely dependent or largely reliant on the emergence or the growth of air transport. Tourism industry we have seen already. The number 97% is just specific to India, but all across the world, tourism is heavily dependent on air transport. And we know, and probably we in the experience of last 2 years, we can vouch more. Sorry, we can vouch more strongly about it because we have seen, the world has seen how much the COVID pandemic has impacted tourism. And how did it impact? Because many of the air transport had to be halted, actually, had to be shut down. So tourism industry as a revenue generator has been severely impacted by the COVID pandemic, and that impact is through the impact that it had on air travel primarily. Improvements in global trade, obviously, as we have stated that earlier. And it provides job opportunities for millions of people, and it's directly as well as indirectly. So people who are actually associated with air transport companies or aviation companies in general, manufacturing, design, analysis, etc. And in addition to that, several other supporting segments, and also the tourism, as we have seen. Tourism industry also is a major job provider, and that that is also facilitated by aviation industry. So aviation industry directly provides jobs to several people, and in addition to that, through its impact on other segments like tourism, it provides further a larger number of jobs to in various segments of industry as well. So that's importance in the global level. That is importance in the economic scenario, as a job provider, and also something which connects the world together. Now, this slide is just something which again we know: civil and military aviation, quite obvious. Private and commercial air travel, regardless of whether the flights are the passengers as well as cargo of that or the two. The whole thing is referred to as civil aviation, whereas military aviation is which is purely under the government under control of the government, and that is disabled to that is designed to have a aerial warfare, some various operations, etc., and purely under the government control. So civil aviation and military aviation: civil aviation for the passengers and cargo, and military for the defense and warfare related requirements of the country. And there are crossovers which are also important, not just in India, all across the world. There are airports where you can have both civil and military aviation. I guess even the Coimbatore airport had that until recently, probably not anymore. But civil and military aviation, many of our airports are sort of shared between civil and military aviation. Sorry, civil and military operations. So airports, some of them are points where there is a crossover between civil and military aviation. Now, airlines and airports. So now we are going to get specific into airports and how airports are connected to airlines, or what are the priorities of airports, what are the priorities of airlines, and where do the two business meet. Obviously, they need each other. Airports cannot operate without airlines. Airlines cannot meet. Airlines cannot operate without airports. And obviously, the connecting link between the two is the passengers. Right? They are common to both. they make use of the airports, they make use of the airlines. So airlines are connected to airports by way of passengers and vice versa. And usually in the modern economies, airlines are connected to airports through partnerships. So airline partnership is what drives the traffic. That is, the airlines will have partnerships with airports. We'll see some of the business models later. We'll be discussing them, the types of business models, but they strike deals with airports in such a way that they can make use of specified runways and cargo facilities, etc. And whatever is for a particular airline, whatever is required between that airline for the use for that particular region, for that particular city, whatever are the foreseen requirements of that airline, they are availed by the airport by a specific understanding. That is a partnership. So, for example, SpiceJet can have a deal with Coimbatore Airport on what are the facilities that it requires, how many landings, how many takeoffs it may make use of per day, how many runways does it want to have at a priority, how many terminals, how many gates will it require to have, etc. So these are all elements, or these are all parts of the deals or the partnership that the airports make with airlines. And when in striking such deals, it's important to see what the airlines want and what the airports want. Obviously, what airlines want is they need optimized revenue as a result of efficiency. Optimized revenue as a result of efficiency. Efficiency is important because you don't want to have too many flights. You, by optimizing the number of flights, optimizing the number of takes of landings, you need to have the better revenue, and the turnaround times, the time that you need to spend in each airport waiting for waiting for takeoff, waiting for landing, etc., has to be minimal, and the usage charges of the airport should be minimal. Then capacity, higher capacity, convenient schedules should be in connection, or rather it should be in accordance with the requirements of the airline. And ground transportation means for getting the passengers as well, that is the facility for the passengers to be able to reach there as well as to get out of that place. That should be a high quality, and customer service within the airport has to be good. And then of course other facilities like dining, shopping options, etc., should be good. So what an airline wants by from an airport, in order to facilitate or in order to improve its own business, is this list. And at the same time, what airports expect for their sustenance, their profitability, are in different directions actually. Of course, one is sustainable operations, growth in business actually, and use that meets the needs of all carrier. That is, an airline can be specific to its own requirements, whereas an airport should have a system which can cater to multiple airlines, because it needs to satisfy the requirements of various airlines, air transport companies. So it should be able to, or it should be in a position to provide to the requirements or to cater to the requirements of multiple carriers. And should have the ability to attract passengers, because the higher the traffic, the usage, the higher is going to be the revenue as well as the profitability. And diversity in airline relationships, that is to multiple stations, multiple types of aircraft, multiple and also like across passengers, cargo, etc. So it should have diversity so that the operation is more profitable and the revenue is high. So these are the requirements of the airport, and but specific to their relations with the airline companies. Okay, anything that we have to discuss further? I probably will stop here. I have a small video that I want to play. So with that, we'll stop for the day. Anything you want to discuss further, you can please take up right away before I go to the video. Now, this video, which I'm going to play, it's a short one actually. You can just watch it. It actually touches upon some of the points that we have discussed here. That is how airports contribute to the economy. And this video is specific to Hong Kong Airport. So all whatever they mention in that are specific to Hong Kong Airport. But we can see that in a general sense, it applies to most of the modern cities or modern airports, because all those factors that they put there, how an airport contributes to the economy of the economy by way of various aspects, travel, movement of goods, etc. They all applies to others also. So why I'm playing this is because of the generic message that we can get from it. It's a short video, very I put it in the this one also. You can see it at your leisure as well. I'll just play it for now. Is the audio? I'll just play it now. I don't know how will the audio be, but then it has subtitles, and some of the conversations are in Chinese. Anyway, I guess it has subtitles for English as well as Chinese. So I hope you will be able to follow. Okay, that's all. You can probably see. I'll be uploading the presentation wherever you want. You can see it again. But then the promo, this video probably is made as a promo for gaining the public support for the intended master plan 2030, etc. But then the importance of it is the numbers apart. The the way that it says it connects or it contributes to the economy by way of industrial expansion, by way of connectivity, by way of contributing to labor directly and indirectly, they all applies to any airport in any modern economy. So that's the importance of the perspective that is presented, though it is specific to Hong Kong International Airport. Okay, with that, we'll stop for the day. We'll continue tomorrow. Thank you. Thanks to all of you. Bye.